I never believed the rumors about the old textile factory. I figured every town had its share of spooky stories, whispers about places where things had gone terribly wrong. I was just a guy trying to make rent, and the offer for a midnight security shift at double pay was too good to pass up. Maybe if I'd listened more carefully, I wouldn't have been there that night. The building loomed like a wounded giant, its windows cracked like veins across its dusty face. When I pulled into the parking lot, the only light came from a flickering street lamp, buzzing like an angry hornet. I sat there for a minute, engine idling, questioning my life choices. My gut twisted in a way it hadn't in a long time, but I shook it off. Money was money. I met Frank at the entrance, the day shift guard. He looked about ready to collapse, dark circles under his eyes and a tremor in his hands as he passed me the keys and clipboard. "You knew?" he asked, voice low. "Yeah, first night." He stared at me a second too long. "Stick to the ground floor. Don't wander." Before I could ask what he meant, he shoved the clipboard at me and practically ran to his car. I watched his taillights vanish into the fog before stepping inside. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of oil and rust. The factory was a skeleton of its former self. Long corridors lined with abandoned machinery, rusted conveyor belts that hadn't moved in decades, and walls covered in peeling paint that curled like withered fingers. The silence wasn't comforting. It was oppressive, like the building itself was holding its breath. I clicked on my flashlight and started my rounds. The beam of light sliced through the darkness, revealing more decay and dust than I cared to see. Every footstep I took echoed unnaturally, as if something unseen was walking just a step behind. About 20 minutes in, I heard it. A faint clatter from somewhere deeper in the building. I froze. My mind offered up logical explanations. A rat, a draft, the building settling, but my body tensed, like prey sensing a predator. "Get a grip," I muttered under my breath, and moved towards the sound. The hallway narrowed as I progressed. Pipes ran along the walls like arteries, dripping water onto the concrete floor. My flashlight flickered once, twice, before stabilizing. That's when I noticed it. Footprints. Wet, bare footprints leading away from a puddle and down the hallway. My mouth went dry. I hadn't seen anyone when I came in. There was no logical reason for wet footprints inside a building that had been abandoned for over a decade. I called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" But my voice sounded small and foolish. There was no answer, just the hollow hum of the building settling into deeper silence. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe another guard had been here earlier. Maybe the pipes were leaking worse than I thought. I turned away, determined not to spook myself. I'd just finished my patrol, clock out, and never look back. Still, as I moved down the next hallway, I kept glancing over my shoulder, feeling eyes that weren't there. The control room was my next checkpoint. It was at the heart of the building, overlooking the factory floor through a massive glass window. As I climbed the stairs to it, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was somehow being watched from below. My flashlight swept over the machinery, the conveyor belts, the long-forgotten spools of thread. Nothing moved. Nothing should have. The door to the control room groaned as I pushed it open. Inside, dust motes danced in my flashlight beam. Old monitors sat dead on the consoles, their cracked screens staring back at me like blind eyes. I moved to check in on the clipboard hanging by the door. Just a few scribbles from previous guards, noting all clear. Nothing unusual. Boring shift. I chuckled to myself. Maybe tonight would be the same. Maybe I was just jumpy because it was my first night. Maybe the loud slam of the control room door behind me snapped my thoughts like dry twigs. I whipped around, heart hammering. The door was closed. I hadn't closed it. In the beam of my flashlight, I saw it. The handle, slowly, unmistakably, was turning on its own. A cold chill stabbed through me. I stumbled back, knocking over an old chair that crashed against the floor with a deafening bang. I fumbled for the walkie-talkie clipped to my belt, but all that came through was static. The handle stopped moving. The door creaked open an inch, then two. I didn't wait to see what would come through. I bolted, down the stairs, across the factory floor, not caring about protocol or patrol routes. I just needed to be anywhere but there. As I sprinted down the hallway, my flashlight flickered again. And in that brief sputter of darkness, I saw them. Shadowy figures lining the walls, faces hidden, bodies still, watching. When the light steadied, the hallway was empty. But the fear remained, lodged deep in my chest, like a splinter I couldn't dig out. I didn't stop running until I reached the main security office near the front entrance. Slamming the door shut behind me, I leaned against it, gasping for breath. The old monitors buzzed with weak black and white footage of the empty factory. Empty, as if nothing had happened, as if no one had been there. But deep inside, I knew something was awake in that factory. Something that didn't want me there. And my shift had only just begun. I sat there for a long time, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The dim glow of the security monitors cast sickly shadows across the tiny office, making every movement outside the door seem like a threat. Part of me screamed to leave. Just grab the keys, run to my car, and never look back. But another part of me, the stubborn, logical side, insisted that I stay. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe stress and lack of sleep were messing with my head. I took a few deep breaths, forcing my shaking hands to steady. I needed to finish the shift. One night, that's all it was. For a while, I stayed in the office, glued to the monitors. Every so often, the static would shift and the screen would go fuzzy, but nothing moved. No shadowy figures, no doors slamming shut on their own. I almost convinced myself it had been a hallucination. But then, I noticed something strange on camera 3. The one covering the farthest wing of the factory, where the oldest machinery sat abandoned in heaps. A shape stood there, just outside the camera's field of clarity. It wasn't walking. It wasn't moving at all. It was just standing. I leaned closer, squinting at the grainy footage. I could just make out the outline. Tall, hunched, head tilted slightly, as if listening, my stomach twisted in fear. I blinked, the screen flickered, and it was gone. I rubbed my eyes and checked again. Nothing. Just the same deserted hallway and rusting equipment. I convinced myself it was a glitch. Had to be. Trying to shake the fear, I forced myself to get back on patrol. Sitting still was making me paranoid. If I kept moving, kept busy, maybe the unease would pass. I made my way through the factory floor, keeping my flashlight steady, even though my hand trembled slightly. Each step felt heavier than the last, like I was walking into a growing pressure. An invisible weight pushing back at me. That's when I heard the whispering. It was faint at first, so faint that I thought it was the wind sneaking through broken windows. But the words became clearer as I moved deeper into the wing. Harsh, angry, incomprehensible. It sounded like multiple voices speaking at once, overlapping in a frantic rush. I stopped dead in my tracks, shining my light into the darkness. Nothing. "Hello?" My voice cracked as I called out. "Is someone there?" The whispering stopped instantly, replaced by a suffocating silence. I took a cautious step forward, ears straining for any hint of sound. Suddenly, the metal lockers lining the wall slammed shut. All at once, a deafening chorus that echoed down the corridor. I stumbled back, heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't wait to investigate. I turned around and walked briskly, not running, not yet, back toward the central hallway. I kept telling myself not to panic, that I was still in control, that everything had a logical explanation. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. Passing the old break room, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. A shadow, flickering in the reflection of the cracked glass window. It wasn't my shadow. It moved wrong, too quickly, darting just out of sight whenever I tried to focus on it. I pushed open the break room door with my flashlight raised. Dust covered the tables and chairs, coffee cups left behind like the workers had just vanished one day. A cracked vending machine stood against the wall, its glass smeared with something dark and sticky. As I scanned the room, the temperature dropped sharply, like I had walked straight into a freezer. My breath misted in front of me, and a low hum vibrated through the floor beneath my boots. Then I saw it, etched into the table nearest to me. Deep gouges in the wood were words. Messy, desperate. "Get out." I staggered back, almost dropping my flashlight. That wasn't old graffiti. The marks were fresh, the wood still curling at the edges where it had been scraped. My skin crawled. I spun around and hurried back toward the main hallway, no longer caring about finishing the patrol. Screw the paycheck. No amount of money was worth this. As I approached the entrance lobby, I realized something horrifying. The main door was no longer where it was supposed to be. The entire corridor seemed wrong, longer, twisting. The door I had come through at the start of my shift was gone, replaced by an endless panic finally took hold. I turned back the way I came, hoping to find the security office, my car, anything familiar. But every corner I turned led me somewhere different. Stairwells I hadn't seen before. Rooms that shouldn't exist. Corridors that bent in impossible angles. It was like the building was rearranging itself around me, trapping me inside its rotting guts. That's when the lights overhead began to flicker, one by one, in a slow pulse, almost like a heartbeat. I kept moving, faster now, ignoring the pain in my legs and the burning in my lungs. I needed to find a way out. My flashlight flickered and died completely, plunging me into absolute darkness. I froze, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out all other sounds. For a moment, there was only blackness and my own ragged breathing. And then, from somewhere just behind me, I heard the soft, deliberate sound of footsteps. Not running, not rushing, just following, patient. Like whoever, whatever, was back there, knew I wasn't going anywhere. I tightened my grip on the useless flashlight and started to run blindly into the dark, praying I would find something, anything, before it found me first. I ran until my legs screamed in protest, until my breath came in short, painful gasps. My mind screamed at me to stop, to find somewhere to hide, but instinct pushed me forward into the maze of corridors that seemed to have no end, no mercy. The factory around me groaned and creaked like some massive wounded animal. Pipes above hissed and leaked. Shadows twisted along the walls, moving with a mind of their own. No matter where I turned, it felt like something was hurting me deeper inside, away from any possible escape. At some point, I stumbled into a stairwell I didn't recognize. It spiraled downward, disappearing into blackness. I had no idea where it led, but the footsteps behind me were getting closer, and hesitation was a luxury I could no longer afford. I took the stairs two at a time, my boots slamming against the concrete so loudly that I barely heard the whisper that brushed against my ear. "You don't belong here." I nearly lost my balance, but caught myself on the rusted handrail, scraping my palm raw. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I saw what was following me, I knew deep down I'd lose my mind. At the bottom of the stairwell, I burst through a heavy door into what looked like the factory's old sub-basement, a place even the workers must have forgotten about. The air here was thick, almost solid, filled with a stench so foul it made my eyes water. Mold coated the walls, and puddles of stagnant water splashed underfoot. I swung the dead flashlight like a weapon, wishing desperately that it would flicker back to life. As I moved deeper into the sub-basement, I started noticing strange things. More signs I should have never ignored. Old workers' uniforms, torn and rotting, hung from nails in the walls like macabre decorations. Names were stitched into the fabric, names I didn't recognize, but somehow felt wrong in my mouth when I tried to whisper them. And then I found the elevator. It sat in the center of a large open chamber, its doors rusted and stuck halfway open. A low, rhythmic hum came from inside, like a distant machine still running after all these years. Against every instinct screaming inside me, I approached it. Inside the elevator, the floor was covered in deep, dark stains. Chains hung from the ceiling, swaying gently, even though there was no breeze. A broken control panel flickered weakly, displaying a single, pulsing number. -6. Not a floor that should exist. The air grew heavier. I backed away slowly, the hair on my arms standing on end. That's when I saw the reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall. But it wasn't mine. It was taller, thinner, its limbs too long, its head cocked at a grotesque angle. Black eyes stared back at me, empty and endless. Before I could even scream, the lights overhead exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the basement into pitch darkness once more. The humming grew louder, vibrating through my bones. From somewhere in the blackness, something began dragging itself across the wet floor. Slow, deliberate, as if savoring the moment. I fumbled blindly for something, anything to defend myself. My hand closed around a piece of broken pipe. I raised it in front of me, but in that darkness, it felt like a meaningless gesture. The dragging sound stopped just a few feet away from me. Then, a voice. Not whispered, not screamed, but spoken in a hollow, mechanical tone that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "You stayed too long." Something cold brushed against my ankle. I lashed out blindly, swinging the pipe, but hit nothing but air. My panic exploded into full-blown terror as unseen hands, dozens of them, seemed to grasp at me from the darkness, pulling at my clothes. I fought. I screamed, but it was like punching through water. The harder I struggled, the tighter the grip became. Images flashed in my mind. Visions of workers trapped down here. their faces twisted in eternal terror, their mouths open in silent screams. I saw the factory's history, the accidents, the cover-ups, the forgotten dead buried beneath layers of concrete and time. I was becoming part of it. With a last surge of desperate strength, I tore myself free and ran, not caring where I was going. I just needed to move, to escape whatever had claimed this place. The hallways blurred past me in a nightmarish haze. The factory's layout twisted and shifted like a living thing. And more than once, I thought I saw doorways slamming shut just before I could reach them, forcing me to take another path. Somewhere ahead, I glimpsed light. Real light. Streaming from a half-open service door, hope surged inside me like wildfire. I ran faster, pushing my body beyond its limits, ignoring the stabbing pain in my chest and legs. Just as I reached the door, something slammed into me from behind, sending me sprawling to the ground. I rolled over, gasping, expecting to see that thing looming over me. But there was nothing. Only the dark. The light from the doorway was fading fast, like someone was slowly, methodically closing it. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline drowning out the pain, and threw myself at the opening. My hands closed around the cold metal of the door frame. I yanked myself through just as the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening boom. I collapsed onto the ground outside, gasping for air, tears streaming down my face. When I finally looked back, the doorway was gone. Just a solid crumbling wall where it had been. And the factory behind it stood silent, its windows dark and empty, as if it had been abandoned for decades. As if I had never been there at all. I lay there on the cracked pavement, my heart pounding so violently, it drowned out every other sound. For a long time, I didn't move. I was terrified that if I so much as blinked, I'd wake up back inside that nightmare. The cold night air stung my skin, but it was a welcome pain. Proof that I was alive, that I had somehow escaped whatever hell had been waiting for me in that factory. Eventually, I forced myself to sit up. My clothes were torn and soaked, my body bruised and battered. I looked around. The parking lot was empty, silent, bathed in the weak, flickering light of a single dying street lamp. My car sat where I had left it, but it looked wrong somehow. Dust and grime coated it like it had been abandoned there for years. The tires sagged, flat and rotted. Even the paint looked faded, peeling. Every instinct screamed at me to get away, to run and never look back. But where would I go? My phone was missing, probably lost inside that cursed building. I was stranded alone, in a place that seemed to exist outside of time itself. I stumbled toward my car anyway, desperate for any sense of normalcy. When I pulled the door handle, it creaked open with a sound like bones snapping. The interior smelled of mildew and rot. I slid inside, gripping the steering wheel with trembling hands. The keys were still in the ignition. I twisted them, praying the engine would turn over. Nothing. Just a clicking noise, sharp and mechanical, echoing louder than it should have in the still night. I slumped back against the seat, trying not to cry. My body was wrecked, my mind frayed to the breaking point. I needed help, but there was no one around. No passing cars. No distant sounds of the city. Just an endless, suffocating silence. That's when I noticed the figure standing at the edge of the parking lot. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light. A shadow maybe. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized it was real. A tall, thin figure, just standing there, motionless, staring at me. I froze. Every muscle in my body tensed to the point of snapping. Slowly, it began to move. gliding across the pavement without sound, without any visible motion of its legs. It moved like a puppet pulled on invisible strings, jerky and unnatural. I fumbled with the door handle, throwing myself out of the car and backing away. The figure kept coming. I didn't think, I just ran. I sprinted toward the main road, the cracked asphalt tearing at my shoes. My lungs burned, my vision blurred with panic, but I didn't dare look back. Somehow, impossibly, I made it to the road. And just as I did, headlights flared in the distance. A car. Real, solid salvation. I waved my arms frantically, shouting hoarsely. The vehicle slowed, then stopped beside me. A middle-aged man leaned out of the driver's window, his face etched with concern. "Are you all right? What happened?" I couldn't form words. The man helped me into his car. I collapsed into the passenger seat, too exhausted to explain. As we pulled away, I risked one final glance back. The factory was gone. In its place stood a vacant lot, overgrown with weeds and littered with debris, as if no building had ever stood there. As if everything I had experienced was a hallucination. Or worse, something that existed in a crack between realities. The man drove me to the nearest hospital. Along the way, he kept casting nervous glances at me, probably wondering what kind of nightmare I had escaped from. I tried to tell him, but every time I opened my mouth, the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain the unexplainable? At the hospital, they ran tests, asked questions I couldn't answer. The police came too, but there was no crime scene, no proof, no missing persons report that matched what I had been through. Eventually, they chalked it up to trauma, shock, maybe a mental break. But I know what I saw, what I felt. In the weeks that followed, I tried to rebuild some semblance of a normal life. I went back to my routines, kept my head down, avoided late-night shifts like the plague. But I was never the same. The nightmares came first. Vivid, suffocating dreams, where I was back in that sub-basement, running endlessly through dark, twisting corridors. Always running, never escaping. Then came the signs. I'd catch glimpses of movement in reflective surfaces, hear faint whispers when I was alone. Sometimes I'd wake up to find my shoes wet and muddy, as if I'd been walking somewhere during the night without my knowledge. And sometimes, just sometimes, I'd hear the faint hum of that broken elevator. I moved cities eventually, desperate for a fresh start, for distance. But no matter where I go, I feel it. A presence lurking just at the edges of my life, waiting, watching. Because some places don't let you leave. Not really. They mark you, claim you, and one day, when you least expect it, they come back for what's theirs.